Research to supposedly improve the human condition has a very dark past.
The men with syphilis were not told they were infected and were not treated.
But in this modern age, we should be able to trust the researchers.
So an individual that's enrolled in a clinical trial should know the potential benefits and the potential risks.
That's called informed consent.
People die in clinical trials as a result of these studies.
This week, a controversial and shocking sea change in rules for performing medical experiments on people.
This movement, led largely by Maha moms.
Make America Healthy Again was the promise Robert F. Kennedy Jr. made to millions of American mothers.
I am hoping that he will shine a light on a lot of these things.
This week, we talk with two moms about their concerns and hopes for a healthier future for their children.
5 years after the start of the COVID pandemic, there's an ongoing crisis to diagnose and treat the lingering health impacts of the virus and the vaccine.
So I talked to colleagues around the world and asked them, hey, are you seeing this?
This week, a pathologist who first noticed the infamous blood clot trend talks with us about medical misses and what still needs to be done. Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. Today we begin with a sea change in America's framework for conducting experiments on humans. The biggest surprise is you probably know little to nothing about it. It surrounds a provision tucked into a law, then quietly implemented by the FDA. It reverses decades of ethical tenets that were designed to prevent horrific abuses that have occurred in the past. Today's cover story is uninformed consent.
It's a profound shift. These are people's lives.
James Lyons Weiler is a scientist who heads the nonprofit Institute for Pure and Applied Knowledge, or IPAC. He's also an expert on informed consent. What is the notion of informed consent? What is it supposed to entail?
So an individual that's enrolled in a clinical trial should know the potential benefits and the potential risks. So informed consent includes accurate and understandable communication of the benefits and the risks, and then it leaves the decision to the patient to enroll in the trial or not on the basis of their personal assessment of the risks and benefits themselves.
The concept of informed consent emerged from an American tragedy, the U.S. government's experiment on black men with syphilis in Tuskegee, Alabama in 1932.
The men with syphilis were not told they were infected and were not treated, even after penicillin was discovered to be an effective cure for the disease in the 1940s. Over the course of the experiment, 128 participants died of syphilis or syphilis-related complications.
The unethical government research was exposed in 1972. An outcry led to installment of core ethics in human research. They required researchers to tell patients about the risks of being in a study and get their explicit consent to take part. Also, ethics experts on institutional review boards, or IRBs, must oversee the studies, and the studies have to potentially benefit the people taking part.
And it should not subject them to unnecessary risks and harm that exceed the benefit to the people in the trial. And that's the beautiful thing. It's not necessarily a benefit to society or something like that. It's to the individuals in the trial.
But even under the post-Tuskegee rules, there have been shocking violations of informed consent rules by unethical researchers testing potentially profitable drugs or treatments. In 2000, I uncovered the tragic case of Gage Stevens. A researcher at Pittsburgh Children's Hospital, Dr. Susan Orenstein, talked Gage's parents into enrolling him in a study on an acid reflux medicine called Propulsid, made by Johnson & Johnson. What was your impression of what the risks of this drug were, based on that consent form?
Hardly anything.
Dr. Orenstein told Gage's parents the test drug was approved for children. It wasn't. Sadly, Gage died. After my investigation, the coroner determined his death was from his participation in the drug study. The FDA cited Dr. Orenstein for a faulty study consent form that was coercive and didn't clearly state the risks, among other violations. Years later, an equally disturbing case of informed consent violations. It was a federal experiment on 1,300 extremely premature infants. Parents say they had no idea their babies could be injured or killed. The study was named SUPPORT. SUPPORT stands for Surfactant Positive Airway Pressure and Pulse Oximetry Randomized Trial. Funded with $20.8 million tax dollars, it was a collaboration among the National Institutes of Health and 24 research bodies, including Duke and Yale universities and medical schools. Bernita Lewis also agreed to enroll her baby Christian in the SUPPORT study at the same hospital.
Christian was born at 27 weeks.
How much did he weigh?
He was 1 pound, 9 ounces. He was very tiny.
She says a hospital worker told her the study was just to collect data.
She asked Dad, would I be interested in Christian being in a study? They wanted to use his medical records to help babies in the future. And I told them absolutely they could use any records they wanted to use.
Did she tell you there was a possible risk of death?
No, there were no risks discussed.
Years later, parents found out their babies' oxygen levels were randomly set, not for the good of the infants, but for the purposes of the study. And under the study, their oxygen monitors were rigged to give false readings. That's so hospital personnel wouldn't adjust the baby's oxygen to help them. Some died as a result. When the misconduct was exposed, the government agency that polices study ethics told researchers they violated informed consent regulations for their failure to describe the reasonably foreseeable risks of blindness, neurological damage, and death.
I was angry, and I couldn't believe that some people who took oaths to protect people would actually do this. That was mind-boggling.
If you had been told the risks involved and what they were really going to do, would you have signed him up?
Absolutely not. No.
Yet in the aftermath of the SUPPORT baby oxygen scandal, there were no apologies from the government or researchers, and no one was held to account. Instead, many in the research community came together in a push to loosen the rules on informed consent. They finally got their wish with a provision embedded in the 21st Century Cures Act. President Obama signed it into law in his final full month in office.
In the 21st Century Cures Act, just before it was signed into law, there was a clause that was added called the Minimal Risk Clause. This clause allows individuals without their knowledge to be enrolled in clinical trials. If the people running the clinical trial have convinced themselves and an IRB that the patients enrolled in the trial are at minimal risk.
The obvious problem is what constitutes minimal risk relies on the honesty and judgment of researchers who may not be honest or have good judgment. Scientists who frequently are paid to conduct studies for drug companies say they've had increasing difficulty getting enough patients to enroll in studies when they're told of the risks, and they argue the greater good can't be served if they can't do their studies.
I'm surprised that scientists would take the position that their research is more important than the well-being of another human being. And there's a number of reasons why the 21st Century Cures Act was put into play. Those included that it was a lengthy process to get people into clinical trials. It was an added expense, that people overseas weren't doing it, and so we were no longer competitive, and that we could get results faster. And they put a shine on it by saying, we're going to get to cures that are just around the corner faster by doing this.
The changes can be found on the website of Health and Human Services, or HHS. In some cases, HHS now allows for a written informed consent document to be replaced by an oral process where the doctor has a points to consider conversation with a prospective study patient. And the researchers can omit what used to be required, telling the patient about alternatives to participation in the study and telling the patient about research-related injury that could happen. Lyons-Weiler says under the new rules, researchers can even enroll you in a study without telling you at all. For example, your doctor could change your normal medication without disclosing to you that he's doing it as part of a study.
So if they can hide the fact that you're on a clinical trial without giving you prior knowledge about it, you, by definition, can't make a free, prior, informed decision.
Supporters of the loosened rules on informed consent say it will bring new innovations and advances to patients who need them faster and more efficiently. The FDA has said the changes will have benefits in the form of healthcare advances because studies that would not have been possible if patient consent were required can now be done. Patients and consumers weren't clamoring for the changes, says Lyons-Weiler. He's convinced the upheaval is driven by pharmaceutical interests, putting profits over safety.
What you're doing when you say, I think that the risk of what I'm going to do to your body is so minimal that you have no say over it because I want to make more money at the market or get my product to market faster, is you're commoditizing that risk and you're stating the value. When it comes to informed consent, the individual should be able to state the value of their own life because for many people, their lives are invaluable, right? People die in clinical trials as a result of these studies, or they suffer chronic illness, and loved ones lose loved ones.
No word on what changes, if any, will be made to all of this under the Trump administration. When we come back, moms on the front line in the fight to make America healthy again. President Trump and the man he appointed to oversee America's troubled health agencies, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., have promised to make America healthy again. That idea is finding appeal among millions of Americans, especially within a movement of moms who've long been looking for more natural and effective solutions to their families' health problems. Lisa Fletcher reports.
It's a moment some thought would never happen. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. sworn in as the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Secretary.
He's now poised to enact big changes to American health policy. The Kennedy hearings hit on some of the controversial issues he's championed over decades.
The bottom line is the same. Kennedy can kill off access to vaccines and make millions of dollars while he does it. Kids might die, but Robert Kennedy can keep cashing in.
Senator, I support vaccines. I support the childhood schedule. I will do that. The only thing I want is good science, and that's it.
But his confirmation and the prospects of a refocus on a healthier America have appeal to one key bipartisan group.
I'm just going to get some meat browned.
Marylander Amanda Oliver is a fan. The mom of 3 is looking forward to new policies that better fit her own concerns for her family's health and well-being.
I am the gatekeeper here in my house and for my family, and you know that it is my role in this house to understand everything that's coming in and that's being fed to my children, and I take that very seriously.
What kind of things got your attention as a mom that didn't have your attention before?
As I began to research the pesticides, herbicides, glyphosate, that definitely was clearly something I did not want to mess around with. I wasn't comfortable taking chances with my children.
Danielle Lasher, a working mom of 6, is president of a group called Informed Choice Maryland that advocates for parental rights.
I think I'm privileged to still be able to feed my family a lot of good organic foods and grow food, and I know everybody doesn't have those options. I certainly recognize I'm not exactly like everyone else, and that I approach the way I raise my kids and the way I feed my family, keep my home, make decisions through a bit of a different lens.
She believes one of the first things that needs an overhaul is the nation's food labeling system.
There shouldn't be 50 different names for MSG. There shouldn't be this confusion over aspartame, sucralose, fructose, what's better for you, what's not. Most consumers don't have the time to stay on top of that, even if they have the desire.
For many Americans, and moms like Lasher and Oliver, RFK Jr. represents the hope for positive change with his MAHA, or Make America Healthy Again, campaign.
This movement, led largely by MAHA moms from every state, you can see many of them behind us today, and in the hallways and in the lobbies, is one of the most transcendent and powerful movements I've ever seen.
I am hoping that he will shine a light on a lot of these things, a lot of these probably old bureaucratic processes that have not evolved in who knows how, 20, 30, 40 years.
As for Lasher, her optimism is rooted in her experience working for Kennedy on his campaign last year before he dropped out to support Trump.
I think when you pick away the things the media says about him, it's hard to be in a room with him and listen to him talk and not feel, I don't want to say privileged that you're there, but it's not a celebrity thing. He's just a really smart person.
Lasher also wants to see Kennedy tackle the issues of vaccine safety and drug testing, which he's promised to do.
I think the COVID vaccine was safe and the boosters were safe. I mean, a lot of people talk about adverse effects.
We don't have good data on it, and that is a crime. The fact that we don't have a surveillance system that actually works.
I don't know that there's anybody else that's more qualified to tackle this specific problem with vaccines than him. And clearly that is the problem of our time.
Oliver believes issues like health policy and food safety shouldn't be left to partisan politics. She and many others across the country are now waiting to see if RFK Jr. and the new administration will follow through on promises to take a long, hard look at the nation's health and food systems. For Full Measure, I'm Lisa Fletcher in Maryland.
And coming up on Full Measure, blood clots after COVID vaccines. A recent study finds the vast majority of U.S. doctors say long-term illness after COVID, long COVID, is a genuine health problem. But only about 7% felt confident about diagnosing it, and only 4% confident about treating it. What's worse, in terms of solutions, the medical establishment is generally grouping vaccine injuries under the heading of long COVID. Today we hear from a pathologist who may have been among the first to note mysterious blood clots in deceased people who'd been vaccinated. Dr. Ryan Cole is a Harvard-trained medical doctor with a PhD in health policy. What were the main things you were speaking out about?
The main thing was COVID was treatable. Early on, when the word, quote, vaccine came out, I knew right away it was impossible. So I spoke against that immediately, because you can't vaccinate against coronaviruses based on the basic virologic principles and mutation rates.
When you say you can't vaccinate again, are you basically chasing something that's changing so fast it won't be effective?
Yeah, you look at Fauci's holy grail that he failed on, and that was an HIV vaccine. Why? It has a spike protein. It also mutates. It's similar, but not the same, but it's the same construct. You can never catch up with it.
It's interesting because we spoke to some of the experts in the military working on this problem prior to the vaccines being introduced, but they worked on the vaccines. And the chief virologist there told us on the front end kind of what you said. He said, RNA vaccines don't work very well and don't last very long, and if they did, we'd have one for AIDS.
Yes, absolutely correct.
When did you recognize, and why didn't other people, you think, early on that this was a clotting disease?
What was interesting to me is I was noticing during 2020, pre-vaccine, microclots in vessels, and my subspecialty is skin pathology. So I was noticing a lot of biopsies of digits, the fingers, the toes, and there are certain patterns, and all of a sudden we saw an uptick of those patterns. So through the microscope, I saw a lot of clots.
This is with COVID
With
before
COVID.
the vaccine.
Correct. And so I talked to colleagues around the world and asked them, hey, are you seeing this? Yeah, a GI pathologist down in Texas, seeing a lot of clots in my biopsies as well. So it was a subtle pattern we noted. So I noticed early on, and I started speaking out to at least my local community, saying, hey, look, we have a clotting problem with this disease, which far worsened when the genetic injections rolled out.
What did you start to see when the vaccine rolled out in pathology?
Well, that's when I started getting reports from colleagues about clots all over the body and people dropping from pulmonary emboli. I have colleagues in the military talking about young, healthy, active soldiers ending up in the hospital with horrendous clots, sudden death from clots, strokes in young patients from clots.
I'm not a medical professional, but if I were part of a public health establishment that were rolling out a new vaccine or trying to get a handle on a new virus, I would be reaching out and gathering this data, talking to the people that do biopsies and autopsies and also that see and treat the living patients. It doesn't seem like there's any organized effort to do that.
You nailed it, and that's my exceeding frustration. Early on, we treated this as though it were Marburg or Ebola, and so the powers that be and Fauci and others, oh, don't do autopsies, et cetera. The only way we learn from the death of a patient is if we do that post-mortem examination. That was discouraged worldwide, and even now with people dying suddenly and sudden adult death syndrome and whatnot, the number of autopsies is still abysmally low. So we can't educate the next generation of doctors and scientists if we don't examine. I say all the time, you cannot find what you don't look for.
What do you see ahead?
I see a revolution in healthcare of people, number one, taking responsibility for their own health, and two, finding a new way to seek health.
We spoke to Dr. Cole at a conference titled Back to Basics Summit on Family, Food, and Healthcare. After a break, what's ahead next week on Full Measure? Next week on Full Measure, a shocking inside story of what can go on behind the scenes when it comes to vaccines given to most American children.
So when I showed up to start work at Merck, they were dealing with a potential product recall, and it wasn't something that was just casually discussed. It was a sky is falling level event.
The Protocol 7 controversy on the next Full Measure. Until then, we'll be searching for more stories that hold powers accountable. Thanks for watching.